What is up, everyone? Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday to you. Thanks for joining me. This is Ed Reiner, and this is your daily dose of mind stuff. I want to welcome you. Again, if you've never been to the Daily Dose, welcome. This is mind stuff. This is all stuff that personal development, personal growth, things that are good for your mind, all sorts of things, mind stuff. Things that will help you become more happy, healthy, and wealthy, because we all want freedom, and those things can allow us to have that. So the past couple episodes have been, well, actually not the past couple, 2 episodes ago, I believe, we listened to Earl Nightingale, who was Bob's mentor. Bob worked with him. Primarily, we deal a lot with the teachings of Bob Proctor, which was influenced by Earl Nightingale, Napoleon Hill, Andrew Carnegie, Wallace D. Wattles, Thomas Troward. I mean, a whole slew of stuff. Like Bob used to say, he had license to brag about all the information because none of it was his. He just found information, gathered it, studied, took that information and put it in a manner that anyone could understand it. So today, as I was going through my morning studies, because that's what this mind stuff is basically the things that I study on a daily basis that I'm sharing with you, and then any insights that I might have. So today we're a little bit different. I came across a video that I've seen. It's a long seminar, like a 2-hour seminar, but I'm just taking a snippet of it it's from Jim Rohn. I first found Jim Rohn back in 2006, I believe it was 2006. I was at a network marketing leadership conference in Texas, and Jim was speaking. And Jim Rohn was Tony Robbins' mentor, and wealth of wisdom, much different teaching style, very dry. He's super funny. But this was taken from a conference or seminar that he did back in the 80s. So it's a quick snippet on just the importance of personal growth. So let me pop over to Jim, and then we will be back here in 1 sec. See you in a minute.
Find the word major and the word you, so that it reads, the major key to your better future is you. Now, my first suggestion is transfer this to a card or something where you can put it up, where you can see it every day. Preferably put it up where you can see it at the beginning of the day, before you go off to put the day together. This is a good phrase just to glance at, to keep in mind as you're putting the day together. It's called the silent seminar. If you'll just let this talk to you during the day, I found it to be tremendously helpful. The major key to your better future is you. For a big share of my life now, I didn't have this one quite figured out. Among a lot of things I didn't have quite figured out. Many things used to puzzle me back in those early days. I used to wonder why 2 people could work for the same company, one make twice as much money. Now, see, that used to puzzle me. And maybe they were the same age, graduated from the same school, live in the same community, work for the same company, with the same products and the same services. They've got the same traffic, the same problems, and one makes $1,000 a month, the other one makes $2,000 a month. Now, that was my puzzling question. Why would this long list be the same and the money twice as much? I asked, what's the difference between $1,000 a month and $2,000 a month? And I don't mean $1,000 a month, right? I could figure that out. But what makes the difference? Why would one person do twice as well, 3 times as well? Speaking economically. Now, I know there's more than one way to do well. I understand that. But in this little narrow area called compensation, what's the difference? Well, back then, with my faulty thinking, I'm trying to reason it out. I thought, well, maybe time makes some of the difference, right? Some people do better because they have more time. I used to say, Harold ought to be able to do well. He's got a lot of time. If I had all of Harold's time, I could do well. Now, that's got to be dumb, right? Number one, you can't get somebody else's time. A guy says to me one time, he says, you know, if I had some extra time, I could make some extra money. I said, then forget it. There isn't any extra time. Hey, when the clock strikes 12 midnight, that about wraps it up, right? I mean, you can look around the gongs there for a little more, but it's over. You say to the guy, what are you doing? He says, I'm looking for extra time. See, they'll come and take you away, right? There isn't any more time. Now, if you can't get more time, which you can't, what could you get more of that would make a difference in economic results? And here's the key word. Make it a part of your notes. We're going to consider it tonight. The word is value. And I have a little phrase for your notes. Value makes the difference in results. Value makes the difference. You can't get more time, but you can create more value. Now, here's the first lesson of economics. Everybody should learn it from the time they're old enough to understand what a dollar means, how to earn one, how to get one, how to keep one, what to do with it. First lesson of economics. We primarily get paid for value. That's lesson one. Bringing value to the marketplace, that's how you get paid. You don't get paid for the time. I know it takes time to bring value to the marketplace, but you get paid for the value, not the time. Now, since that's true, here's one of the key questions of the evening. Is it possible to become twice as valuable at the marketplace and make twice as much money in the same time? Could you become 3 times as valuable? Make 3 times as much money in the same time? Is that possible? The answer is yes, if. And it's always if, right? Life is known as the big if. Harry Truman once said, life is iffy. How true. And here's the big if we're going to consider it tonight. It's possible to do much better at the marketplace if you go to work primarily on yourself. And that's the theme of our seminar tonight. Learning to work primarily on yourself. People have asked me for the last 24 years, how do you develop an above average income? And the answer is, become an above average person. Develop an above average handshake. Some people want to be successful. They don't even work on their handshake. As easy as that would be to start on. They let it slide. They don't understand. Develop an above average smile. Develop an above average excitement. Develop an above average interest in other people. Develop an above average intensity to win. See, that'll change everything. Probably one of the most frustrating experiences in life is looking for an above average job with above average pay without becoming an above average person. It's called frustration. And Mr. Schoaf gave me probably the greatest clue he gave me when I first met him. He said, Jim, if you want to be wealthy and happy the rest of your life, just learn this lesson well. He said, learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Then Mr. Schoaf gave me probably one of the most important clues among so many things he taught me, but this was in those early days. Mr. Schoaf was very kind, but he was also very abrupt. And he had these interesting questions to ask. I'm giving him a little rundown one day on how things hadn't worked out for me. He said, Mr. Rohn, I've got the answer for you if you will listen carefully. And listen carefully I did that day and for the next 5 years. If somebody's wealthy and happy, you gotta listen. He said, Jim, I've only known you a short time. But he said, it's already my honest opinion that for things to change for you, you've got to change. That wasn't quite the answer I was looking for. But that's the answer he gave me, and I pass it along to you on this warm summer evening in Anaheim, California, 1981, For things to change for you, you've got to change.
Okay, so a lot of good information there. I really enjoy Jim Rohn. He's he's got a different style when he talks. But he's got such great information, and it's the same information but put differently. All of the stuff, when you start looking into personal development, you really start to study, it's the same messages but just put different ways. You can look at 1,000 different things and you're going to get 1,000 different ways. So I like to relate it all back to Proctor Gallagher teachings and Bob's stuff, because Bob installs and brings in the one piece of the puzzle that all of the other ones miss, which is the spiritual side of it, the higher nature of ourselves. We are spiritual beings. And as Jim was suggesting, he's I got some notes here that we're going to kind of go over some of the stuff that he was saying on here, but he was suggesting, you write it down, the saying he had on there, and put it somewhere. Well, there's an importance to that, and that works and holds true with our goals and affirmations that we want to have. If we write them down on sticky notes and post them all over the place, it reminds us, and it puts that. So let me back up. We have the conscious mind. We have the subconscious mind. So the mind is set and split into those two parts, right? The conscious and the subconscious. Now, the conscious mind can accept or reject any idea. The subconscious mind takes whatever is coming to it and is impressed and expresses that. Okay. And it cannot reject, it must accept. So advertising, media, all of those things, people aren't rejecting those ideas. They're bypassing the conscious and going straight into the subconscious mind. And that's causing them to feel a certain way, which then in turn is affecting their behavior, causing their behavior, which then in turn creates the effect, the reaction, which alters the conditions, circumstances, environment, which creates our results. Okay, so if media is doing that all the time, advertising is doing that all the time, we can do that also by putting suggestions and things up all the time. Our subconscious mind will see it. If we're not consciously rejecting it, it's going to go into the subconscious mind, and eventually we'll take root there, and we'll then start to change our behavior. So it's important to see those. When you say those, you repeat those, you're giving your subconscious a demand, a command, and an affirmation that then will start to change and take root into your subconscious. So that was the first thing he had mentioned, writing that down. That's why we want to write that stuff down. The other thing is he talked about time. He said, you can't get more time, which is true. We can't get more time. We all have the same amount of time in a day that there is. Now, some people will argue of that and say, well, what about this person that died early? They didn't have the same amount of time. There's 24 hours in a day. We all have that. Now, what happens within that time is different. Okay. However, we all have the same amount of time in any given day, which is 24 hours. So you can't change the time. He says you can what you can do is you can add more value to yourself. Now, to add even more to that, I'm reminded of a story that Bob used to tell about when he was working for Nightingale Conant. And he said Earl used to get more things done than the majority of people living. He said you get more done in a week than most people get done in a year. And so he said he went to breakfast with Earl one day. They were going to a seminar, and he asked him to come to breakfast. And so Bob had a whole list of questions to ask to him. And he said, as they were sitting there, he asked him, he's like, Earl, how did you master time management? And he said that Earl kind of stopped eating and chuckled a bit and said, I didn't master time. Time can't be managed. We can only manage activities. He says, I merely just make a list of activities, important things I need to do, and then I manage those activities within the time that I have. So we all have the same amount of time. It's what we do with it. Most people, excuse me, most people are wasting time. Think about how many hours are wasted watching TV or scrolling on a phone. In your own life, if you want to be honest with yourself, take a pad of paper, a little notepad, something like this, a little pad. Take this, carry it around with you for the day, and write down how many times you are wasting time. Write down how many hours you've watched TV, how many hours that minutes, whatever it may be. Add those up at the end of the week, and you will be astonished at how much time is wasted. So it's not that successful people have more time. People go, "Oh, they got a lot more money, so they can afford to do things because they've got the time to do it." No, they still have the same amount of time. It's the activities that they're doing within the time that they have. So if you want to do more, you need to start managing your activities and look at where you can do things with the time that you have. And kind of going off kilter on this into another story, but with Earl saying he manages activities, that brings to the story of Ivy Lee, who was a performance expert. And he went to Charles Schwab, who at that time was running the largest steel company. And he told Schwab that, I could give you a couple of ideas that you could do that would make things better around here. And Schwab said to him, he says, "We're already doing things as efficient as we can do them, as well as we know. If you can help me do more of what we already have to do, I'll give you whatever you want." And so he gave him this idea, and he said, "Take out a piece of paper, a pad. Here's what I use, a book, and the night before, write down the 5 most important things that have to be done the next day. And then number those in the order of importance." And so you do that at night. And then the next day, you look at your list and you start with number 1. You don't look at 2 or 3 or 5. You focus on number 1 until it's complete. You don't worry about any of the other ones. And once that one's done, then you move on to number 2. Now, if you only get 1 done, that's great. The other ones move to the next day. And if for some reason you can't get 1 done because some circumstance, you move on to the next one, but you work in order. And he says, by using this method, you'll get far more done, whereas before you probably wouldn't, because you'd be all over the place and there was no order to what you're doing. And order is heaven's first law, order and movement. Things have to be put in their natural order. So they did that, and he tried it out. He said, "Try it out for as long as you like, and then send me a check for whatever it's worth." So the story has it that Schwab ended up giving, a month or 2 later, a check for $30,000. Now, I was just going to try to see. I can't do it right now. $30,000. Now, this was back when Schwab was running the largest steel company. So we could look and see what $30,000 would have been in today's dollars. It's probably in the multiple six figures. But for this one idea, and he said this was the most profitable idea that he had ever learned. So it's putting things in their natural order. So with the time, since we can't get more time, we can add value, but we can also manage our activities within the time that we have. So start doing that and see how it changes your day. The other thing he was saying was that value, he said, value makes the difference. So if you want to earn more, you want to be more, start developing yourself and adding more value to yourself. Now, this goes in with the law of compensation, which we've discussed in a previous episode. And if you haven't seen that, you can kind of look for it. I think I've got it titled that. But the law of compensation clearly states the amount of money that we received is in direct proportion for the need for what we do, our ability to do it, and the difficulty there is in replacing you. So, as we talked about with those three things, well, the first one, the need for what you do, there's probably a need for whatever it is that you do. That's something that you didn't have to worry about doing, trying to create. That was already there. So we don't need to worry about that. Okay. Your ability to do it, this is where what Jim Rohn was talking about adds value. If you increase your ability to do whatever you're doing, you are creating value in yourself, as Jim says, in the marketplace. Now, the difficulty there is replacing you. If you add enough value to yourself and you continually try to get better, just 1% every day, if you keep doing that and you get really good at what you do, there's a lot of amateurs out there, very few experts, but the difference in pay is extraordinary. So if you get really good at what you do and just keep improving on what you do, you're adding value. And what did Jim say? Is value makes the difference. Number 3, the difficulty to replace you becomes obsolete because you've taken care of number 2. So automatically you're going to be very difficult to replace. So look at yourself and whatever you're doing or whatever you want to do and look and say, how easily am I replaced right now? Would the company I'm working for, the whatever I'm doing, if I left, would they feel it? Would it make a difference? And if the answer is no, well, then you need to start adding more value and developing yourself a whole lot more. He said, we get paid for the value, not the time. So that also goes to those 3 income strategies, M1, M2, and M3. We said M1, people trade time for money. So they're not getting paid for their time. Well, they are getting paid for their time, but the cap is the value that position is providing. So there is someone that could be getting paid an hourly wage, but if they keep adding more value to themselves and they become more valuable, they will grow out of that position. Therefore, they will be compensated more. But the problem with the time is that we run out of time. There's not enough time in the day because there's only so much time that we can do so much. So we want to add value, and the people that are trading time for money, they just run out of time. There's a ceiling, and M2, as we've discussed before, is using your money to grow. So investments, that's where we have money growing for itself. And the problem with that one is that most people, it's a good strategy, but most people don't have the money to get into that strategy. And then the third one is developing multiple sources of income, leveraging our time by setting up multiple sources of income, which anyone can easily do, even if they're working in a job that is trading time for money. They can do that if they're managing their time instead of watching TV or doing whatever, watching videos on YouTube and just wasting time. They can actually be learning how they can provide value to a marketplace, finding a problem that they can provide a solution to. And then he had on there, he said, working on yourselves. We want to work on ourselves. That was the whole main theme of his little talk there. And he said, we want to develop. He says, how many people aren't developing an above average handshake or an above average smile? The enthusiastic attitude to win. People aren't developing these things. And really what he's talking about is whatever you want to become, whatever the goal is that you're going after, the person that you are right now is not the person that you're going to be when you reach that goal. The whole purpose of a goal is for growth. It's not to get. Get is just the natural byproduct of growing as a person. So if you remember when we had talked about vibration and the levels of vibration, and So we have an infinite levels of vibration. You should probably, let me see if I can real quick pull up a whiteboard, which I'm going to be using my mouse. So this is not probably going to be the best, but we'll give it a shot. I'm taking all this time and this is going to be a quick lesson. Okay, new drawing. Okay, so let me share my screen here. And we'll put myself. Okay. All right. So if we have, oh, that's a nice straight line. Let these lines represent levels of vibration. Okay. And there's an infinite number of levels. And this is where we are down here. Let's draw a little stick person. Oh, that's really bad with the mouse. Okay. So we are on this level. So our goal is up here. So this is where our goal is. We're down on this level. Now, we can only move based off of the thoughts we have on the frequency or the vibration that we're on. I'm going to refer to them as frequencies. They're the same thing. Now, what Jim's saying is developing above average handshake. People don't want to do that. Well, the person that's up here is going to have the above average handshake. They're going to have the above average smile, all of those things he was talking about. So in order for us to close this gap here between to get up here is we have to start thinking on different levels. So we have to think, okay, this person that's here, how do they act? How do they shake someone's hand? How do they smile? All of those things Jim Rohn was talking about, we need to think, and we can reverse engineer here. Okay, this person up here, how do they smile? We start to think those thoughts of how that person would walk, talk, act, think, feel. And when we start to then incorporate that in our lives, we start to move up the levels to where eventually, because we are being that person, if we can be that person in our mind and we can think about it, as we said in the past, we're a triune being. We're spiritual beings. We live on a physical plane and we have an intellect. So those three stages, if we looked at the vibration, if the cup of water, right? If we have a cup of water here and we add heat to this water, okay, we change the vibratorial rate of the water that it starts to move up and turns to let's make this an S, into steam, and then it moves up into air, ether, or gas. It's the same energy, but we're changing the rate of it. So what we want to do is we want to get on the frequency of what it is that we want and start to act like that person now. We need to start to walk, talk, act as that person would be. How does that person carry himself? What do they do in the morning? What habits do they have? Because just because we have a goal doesn't mean that at some point we wake up and we've received it and we automatically change. We have to change now. And that's what Jim Rohn was talking about. Developing that handshake, developing the personality of that person. That really goes into self-image and creating a new self-image of ourselves. So we want to start to act like that person now, think like that person now, because that person is an idea. And if we have an idea in our mind, it is a thing. It just hasn't manifested on the spiritual level. Like those, all of those vibration levels, all of these levels here are hooked up to each level. So this one's hooked to this one. They all are hooked together. They're all the same thing. They're all levels of vibration. It's like Bobby says that they're like colors of the rainbow. You can't see where one starts and the other one stops. So that idea of who we want to be is here. It's not in the physical form yet. It hasn't manifested. It is an idea, and an idea is every much as bit of energy as we are. So the more we start to act and step into that person now, we start to become that person. And then before we know it, now we're having the income that that person would have. We're having the things that that person would have. We're having those relationships, all of those things, and we've changed our reality. So that's just a little bit of feedback I have based off of what Jim was talking about, and relating it to some of the stuff that we teach here at Proctor Gallagher, or at Proctor Gallagher, Mind Stuff. So yeah, so that is that's going to be it for the day. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you had value, you've got value out of this, share it, like it, subscribe, do all that good stuff that you know you're supposed to do to help people out and get the word passed along. Invite people to this weekend, and towards the beginning of the week, keep an eye out for the times of when I'm going to be coming live. I've got some things going on that I have to shuffle around, so I'm not going to be able to stay on a consistent time. But then after this week, I should be able to get back onto a time frame. I've been testing different times to kind of see what works for you guys watching, and that one also works for me and my schedule and what I do on a daily basis. So just keep an eye out for the announcements. I'll try to get them up with as much headway, with as much to let you guys know, give you a heads up of when I'm going to be coming on live as possible. But just keep an eye out for those announcements of when I will be going live, because it is going to be different times. Some might be in the morning, some are going to be a little bit later, especially I think on Tuesday, possibly. I don't know. We'll see. Just keep an eye out for those announcements. But anyway, and at any rate, that's all I've got for today. I hope you guys got value out of this. Like I said, I will see you guys tomorrow, and have a great rest of your Saturday. And we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Peace. God bless.